Hello and welcome back to Cambrian's virtual show, the show that we're running between the 22nd of May and the 29th of May, where we're going to be delivering on average 3 videos that we're going to be live streaming over this 7-day event. I'm really looking forward to doing these videos and sharing these videos with you. You can see all previous recordings, so we've had 2 so far that we've done today, and all the videos, live videos that are going to be coming up on our website, which is www.cambrianphoto.co.uk. There's a link on there to the Photo and Optics show. That'll take you into the speakers that have already spoken and the ones that are upcoming. You can go back and watch the videos that we've already recorded live. And also with the videos coming up, you can click on the platform that you want, so either YouTube or Facebook, and set a reminder so you know when the event's going to start. Also, we're very happy to announce that all of the... oh, I need to put in the link, sorry. Let's do that. So the link for the speakers is also there as well. There we go. So also we're happy to announce that all the speakers and live talks that we're doing are available for free. So thank you for all the guest speakers for donating their time so we can deliver this content. Because of this as well, we're asking for donations where all profits will go to chosen charities and also local food banks. You can donate on our website with the same following link stuff. Also, there is a direct link, which I'm just posting in the description now. Hello, everyone to watching. Hello, Chris. Hello, Howard. Good to see you. So without further ado, I would like to invite our speaker for this evening, Alyn. Hello, Ben. How's it going?
Very good. How are you
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
You're looking very moody there. I'm still looking like it's like the middle of the day, and you've got this sort of like solemn like vibe going on. I like it. It's like the night sky. It's to suit your lifestyle, is it? Dark.
Protect these eyes, mate. Very sensitive to light.
Oh right, yeah.
No, I'm secretly a vampire. I just haven't told anyone yet.
I suppose, yeah, that's it. Because you spend your night in the stars, don't you? So like,
yeah,
there's no daytime. It's just all nighttime.
I'm basically a landscape photographer if a vampire ever existed. So all I do is go out at night.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, you're certainly getting some amazing images from it as well. So, and also you share your stories on your YouTube feed as well. So you've got a fairly big following on YouTube. And it's not only that as well. There's some fairly the recent video that you posted up as well regarding sort of like comments that sort of news stories have posted and things like that is incredibly entertaining. So anyone that's interested in stuff like that, I'm just going to post a link in the description there. So yeah, lots of people joining in. Hello, Ian. Hello, Tracy. Hello, James. Nice to see you all. Yeah, do you fancy cracking on, Alyn?
Yeah.
Ready for your talk?
Yeah.
I'll
for those of you, go on.
Jump you in there. There we go.
Yes, thank you all for coming. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alyn Wallace, and I am a landscape astrophotographer from South Wales. And yeah, I'm basically a landscape photographer that only goes out at night, so photographing the stars, the Milky Way, planets, all those lovely things. And obviously, being in Wales, we have a lot of dark skies right on our doorstep, but we might not have the best weather in the world for this kind of photography. But I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about my work and what I'd normally be doing if it wasn't for this lockdown, and then I'll talk to you guys about the settings for this kind of photography, and also give you guys some ideas for stuff that you can do from home, because obviously a lot of us are still in lockdown. I know England have started relaxing a little bit, but we still can't go to all of these wonderful, beautiful places out in the rural areas. So I'll give you some ideas for stuff that you can do from your own sort of back gardens. But so I started photography about 5 years ago when I just bought a camera, and I would go up into the hills of the Brecon Beacons, especially on the nights with no clouds and clear starry skies. And this would be a sort of classic image of very beautiful landscape scene. You got Cribben looking from Pen y Fan, and then nice clear starry skies just add that sort of mysticism to it. And I think spending a night under the stars is just one of the most therapeutic ways that you can spend your time. It's just really good to get rid of all that stress of day-to-day life. And another classic example here of the three central beacons, Cribben, Pen y Fan, and Corn D. And I found this composition in the daytime. Obviously, when you go out at night, it's very difficult to find a nice composition. So you have to kind of go out in the daytime and familiarize yourself with the landscape first. And as soon as I found this composition, I knew I'd come back at some point to get a photograph of the Milky Way, because it was south facing, and the Milky Way core crosses the southern skies for those of us in the northern hemisphere. So I knew that if I went back there at the right time of year, get the Milky Way in the right position, because you've got this lovely path that sort of acts as a lead-in line, snaking its way up to Pen y Fan, and then I just wanted the flow to sort of continue up into the night sky and off to the heavens. So that's why I wanted the Milky Way sort of right at the end of that lead-in line there. But this was an image I actually took in my first vlog over on YouTube. So you can go and check that out. It's a bit cringy now, but one of the first vlogs that I did. And usually at this time of year, I'm down on the coast hunting the bioluminescent plankton, because there's typically some good displays at this time of year in the lovely sunny weather that we have. So this is an image taken in South Wales, but of course you can see it up in North Wales as well. Penmon is a particularly popular spot now for hunting the bioluminescent plankton. And the bright star that you see in the middle there, which is reflecting in the water, is actually not a star; it's a planet. That was Jupiter at the time. I've also been traveling the world quite a lot. These three images were from a trip I took to Iceland, of course, to go and see the Northern Lights. You might recognize Fjordsalur on the left, the glacial lagoon. The image in the middle was just a roadside stop, and we had to stop to visit the little boy's room, as it were, and the aurora sort of lined up almost perfectly with this tree. Perhaps my favorite place to photograph the stars, especially in the northern hemisphere, is a little island called La Palma, which is one of the Canary Islands. It's just west of Tenerife. And I love La Palma for a few reasons. First of all, the island itself is what they call a starlight reserve. So there's legislation in place against unnecessary light pollution. And there's all these sort of regulations that they have to abide by because of the observatories on top of the mountain. But the other reason I love La Palma is that even if it's raining and it's cloudy when you wake up in your hotel, it doesn't matter, because you can just jump in your car and drive above the clouds, and you can see in the bottom right, you can see me sort of standing in that very precarious position, and in the distance you can see a sea of cloud. So you're above the clouds, and they do a good job of hiding the little light pollution that there is on the island anyway. And so you're left on top of this mountain above the clouds with just these incredible clear dark skies. You can see the Milky Way arching across the sky, almost glowing. To the naked eye, it just absolutely glows. It's incredible. And again, that bright star is Jupiter, so the planet Jupiter, which was shining at its brightest for that year. And this is one of my favorite images from La Palma. This was during the Geminids meteor shower. So during the meteor shower, obviously you have multiple shooting stars per hour. I think the Geminids goes up to about 120 per hour for a dark sky location, and it was really incredible. And what I've done in this image is did a time lapse for about 6 hours, and then you'd go through all of the images, pick out the ones that had meteors, align the stars, and then blend them into a single image. And you end up with all of the meteors that you captured that night, and sort of try and depict the meteor shower in a single image. And this is probably one of the rarest photographs I've taken. That was during the same trip, and with my friend Jens there. And it was the distance between the subjects that still to this day kind of blows me away. So my friend Jens was probably about 100 meters away, just up on a little hill, a little rocky hill. The meteor on the right, the shooting star. Now, meteors burn up in the atmosphere about a height of about 85 kilometers. The green fuzzy ball that Jens is pointing at is a comet. It's actually quite rare to have a comet in the night sky that's visible to the naked eye. But that was 11 million kilometers away the time I took this photograph. And then the blue cluster of stars at the top right, Pleiades, that thing is 444 light years away. So it's taken the light 444 years to travel from those stars all the way down to my camera. And very recently, this time last year, was the first time I'd ever been to the southern hemisphere. They've got an incredible vantage point of the Milky Way. This image here was taken in the Atacama Desert in Chile. A very popular place for astrophotography. There's lots of observatories in the area because you've got gorgeous, clear, dark skies. The air is very dry and clear. They have a lot of good weather at these high altitudes. So you've really, really perfect conditions for astrophotography. And it just shows in this image the amount of detail that you can see in the Milky Way. On the left, the two white sort of fuzzy balls are the large and small Magellanic Clouds, the little dwarf galaxies that are orbiting our home galaxy, the Milky Way. And on the right, you can see a small fuzzy disk. That's Andromeda, another galaxy, our closest neighbor. And the triangular diffuse glow to the right is something called the zodiacal light, which is basically dust in space reflecting the sunlight. So a true testament to just how dark it is in Chile. And whilst I was down in the southern hemisphere, I couldn't resist a trip to Easter Island. It's one of the most fascinating places I visited, where they carve these moi statues out of a volcano to sort of commemorate somebody important in their tribe. And yeah, probably the first time in my life I've ever felt spiritual, sort of being around these rock carvings that had an insane amount of character. They almost felt alive. It was really quite moving. But again, just being on a tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, completely free of light pollution. You have these gorgeous, gorgeous dark skies. But the main reason I was down in Chile was for an event that only really lasted about 2 minutes, and it was the total solar eclipse, when the moon passes in front of the sun and completely blocks the sun. It was really one of the most moving experiences. It's very profound. It's quite difficult to explain how sort of emotional it was just to experience that sort of 2 minutes of sheer coincidental perfection, and darkness just falls out of the sky. It's really like being in a movie, and you're surrounded by this sort of eerie 360 degree of twilight. But that's typically what I've been getting up to the past few years, whether it be in Wales or sort of traveling around, hunting out the darkest skies and the most sort of otherworldly landscapes. But I'm sure a lot of you are interested to know what sort of gear that I use. You need a camera, whether that's a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. I personally shoot with a Sony A7 III and also an A7S II. That's my main cameras at the moment. You also need a wide angle lens, preferably a lens that opens up to f2.8. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly when we discuss the settings. Obviously, you're going to need a tripod because you're doing long exposures of 10, 20, 30 seconds, sometimes multiple minutes. And I, as a pro partner of Benro, I use Benro tripods and heads. And you'll also need a head torch. I use a Petzl Ticker head torch, which has a red light function. You'll notice a lot of astronomers and astrophotographers using red head torches because it preserves your biological night vision. So you can see much more in the dark, much more detail in the Milky Way once you've given your eyes a bit of time to adjust to the dark. And red light just kind of helps preserve that night vision. So you can see in the dark a lot better. When it comes to the camera settings, obviously you're going to be in a very dark environment. You're trying to get away from light pollution and moonlight. So you're going to be in a dark place. And so the logic behind the settings, the way to think about it, is that you need to collect as much light as possible. So with the aperture, it's good to have a nice wide open aperture so you can let as much light as possible onto your sensor. The more light you collect, the less noisy your images will be. So as an astrophotographer, you're typically looking for lenses that open up to f1.4, f1.8. But I recommend at least f2.8 if you want to get sort of good detail out of the Milky Way and the northern lights. With the shutter speed, obviously the longer you leave the shutter, the more light you collect, which is what we want to do. But if you leave the shutter open too long, the stars begin to trail. So there's a nice quick and easy way to work out your shutter speed based on the focal length of the lens that you're using. They call it the 500 rule, should be called the 500 guide, because it only helps you get to sort of like a starting position. But you basically just do 500 divided by the focal length of the lens that you're using to work out your maximum shutter speed. Now, that only works for full frame cameras. If you're on a crop sensor, you'd use 300. And if you're on a micro 4/3 camera, you'd use 250 instead. But that just gets you to a good starting point. And then through a little bit of trial and error, you can find the right shutter speed for your lens and camera setup. With the ISO, you really have to use high ISO values just to boost the image brightness so you can see detail in the dark areas. But obviously, when you're boosting the ISO, you unveil a lot more noise. You start seeing a lot more noise in the image. I recommend at least 1600. If you're shooting with a more modern camera or a full frame camera, you should be able to get away with 3200 and even 6400 as well. But you can always deal with noise in post-production. There are many different techniques and methods which I teach in my workshops and on my YouTube channel. So it doesn't matter if you have a little bit of noise in your images. There are ways that you can deal with it later. So it's about finding that sweet spot for your camera where, yes, you've got a little bit of noise, but you know that you can sort of deal with it later on when it comes to the post-production side of things. So just to give you a summary, if you're in a dark location, free of moonlight and light pollution, I would typically shoot at about f2.8, 20 to 30 seconds, depending on which lens I'm using, and then an ISO of 3200 to 6400. Now, if you're not lucky to have a nice dark spot near your location, or if you're still stuck in lockdown and you want to shoot from the back garden, you're in more of an urban environment, you can just lower you can stop the aperture down a little bit to f4 5.6. Shutter speed you can bring down to prevent any star trailing if you want, so 10 to 20 seconds. And then the ISO, again, you could just bring it down to 800 or even 1600. So you can just sort of drop all the settings down just a little bit because we've got a little bit more available light. Now, when it comes to light pollution, there are two main forms. There's moonlight and man-made light pollution. So the moon, I mean, there are so many resources on the internet that you can check for the moonlight. But with the man-made light pollution, there's a really good website called lightpollutionmap.info. Basically shows an overlay of Google Maps with light pollution, and it's quite intuitive. So red is obviously bad, and then it gets better as you go yellow, green, blue, and nothing. So it's really good to sort of find out how much light pollution is in the area, but do bear in mind that it's worth thinking about what direction you're going to be facing. So if you're in the Brecon Beacons, for example, which as you can see from the map is really dark, facing south, you will see all of that light pollution from Merthyr and Aberdare. So you kind of have to consider what direction you're facing. Now, this little bit of coast here, the Llanfair Major, Glamorgan Heritage Coast, just to the left of Cardiff, doesn't look dark when you sort of see the zoomed out view. When you zoom in, you realize there's a pretty dark little corner of the coast. And then when you consider that if you're going to be facing out to sea, there's no real light pollution out to sea. So facing out to sea just looks incredible. Oh, somebody's got it wrong there. So facing out to sea is incredible because there's you might have a few ships out there, but nothing too bothersome. This is why all of these southern coasts are really good. So South Wales and Devon and Cornwall and Dorset, because you can just face out to sea, you get lovely dark skies. So when it comes to shooting from home, obviously we've been stuck at home myself during this lockdown, and you can photograph the stars from your very own garden, and you'd be surprised that your camera will pick up a lot more stars than what you can see with the naked eye. But here I was going for the constellation Orion. You can see the 3 stars there that make up Orion's belt, and his sword, and then his torso up above, his 2 legs. That's a bit more of a zoomed in view. So that's the 3 stars there that make Orion's belt. Orion's very low now. It's almost impossible to shoot compared to 2 months ago, but there are still plenty of bright constellations like Ursa Major and Leo that you can photograph right now. Now, if you're not familiar with the motion of the stars and where things are, where the Milky Way is going to be, you can use an app like Stellarium, which is basically a night sky emulator. So it shows you what's in the night sky for your current date, time, and location. And you can look around and move around and see what's out and about. But you can also set your date, time, and location to sometime in the future, the past, present, or future, and any location in the world that you want. So if you're going, when I was going to Chile, for example, I would be looking at Stellarium and familiarizing myself with the Southern Hemisphere night sky, sort of planning my nights many months before I would even go to Chile. So it's a great app for planning and a great app for learning, constellations and their whereabouts and the planets and the Milky Way. Another technique that would be quite fun is to sort of defocus the stars. So you focus on the foreground subject instead, which is what I've done in my profile picture. I've sort of focused on myself and my camera. And in the image on the right, I've focused on the 2 antennae. And then the stars become out of focus. And that kind of makes them big and blurry as well. So if you're in an area where there's not that many stars in the sky, having them slightly defocused like this makes them a lot more big and prominent in the image. It kind of helps bring them out a little bit more, so it can be quite fun just to have a little play with. And this is an example of what you can do with a singular star. These 2 images taken by a friend of mine, Steve Brown, were of the star Sirius. And when Sirius is very low on the horizon, it twinkles and flashes. I'm sure you've all seen the stars twinkle, but Sirius has a really, really prominent twinkle to it. And so what he's done is put Sirius out of focus and then taken multiple images of Sirius and mosaic them into this almost sort of pop art fashion image where you see how Sirius almost changes and flashes in different colors. And the image on the left is an ICM image, an intentional camera movement image where he sort of light painted with Sirius. So it's quite interesting that even with just a singular star, you can get really, really creative and create these sort of very, very artistic pieces. Star trails is another good thing that you can try at home. I've seen good results from star trails in the middle of London. So, even if you've got a lot of light pollution, you can still do star trails. Obviously, you need a prolonged period of clear skies, which doesn't happen as often as I would like in Wales. But when you do, yeah, it's a good excuse to do some star trails. And I actually just released a full video over on my YouTube channel where I go through all of the settings, the setting up, all the gear, all the processing in Lightroom, Star Stacks, and Photoshop. So it'd be worth checking that out. And not much point in me going into much detail here because it's all readily available over on my YouTube channel. And the moon also offers a good opportunity for those of us in light polluted areas. So this was an image I took last month from the hill behind my house in Pontypridd in South Wales, and you can see the quarter moon there, and the 3 dots you can see in a line are the 3 planets. So on the left you got Mars, and then Saturn, and then the brightest one is Jupiter. So the moon and the planets don't really get affected by light pollution because they're so close to us. You can see them through the light pollution. But the light pollution does diminish a lot of stars and things like the Milky Way. But the moon and planets are great, and you can see and shoot them from pretty much anywhere. And with the moon as well, it's a really nice excuse to use a telephoto lens. In landscape astrophotography, we're normally shooting with wide-angle lenses, getting nice big scenes of the Milky Way. But with the moon, it's really nice to use a telephoto lens, make it nice and big in the frame. So this was a sequence I shot last month of the full moon rising. And you can see as the moon gets higher and higher and higher, it starts changing colors because the light gets refracted in Earth's atmosphere. And so only red light reaches the moon when it's very low on the horizon. And as it gets higher and higher, it starts becoming its more familiar whitey color. And another fun little project you can try as well is a HDR moon, a high dynamic range image of the moon, where you can see the illuminated side and the unilluminated side as well. And again, I just put up a video on my YouTube channel showing you exactly how to do this in Photoshop. You'd be surprised how easy it is to do in Photoshop. It's a really good tutorial. If you're new to Photoshop, I know a lot of people out there find Photoshop very daunting, very complex, and there's like a million ways you can do the same thing. But in this tutorial, I made sure to teach it as if you were an absolute beginner in Photoshop. So it's a really good tutorial if you're new to Photoshop. And it's a really fun little project that you can do from home next time you see the moon in the sky. If you're curious how big the moon is going to be in the frame, here's an example here. So the original image, the widest image, was shot with a 135mm lens on a full frame camera. And then I've added frames then so you can see how big the moon will be in the frame depending on different focal lengths. So I use a 100 to 400mm now with my Sony. I used to use the Sigma 150 to 600mm lens, which I affectionately call the moon bazooka. But you can see just how much the moon fills the frame on 600mm on a full frame camera. And talking of that 150 to 600mm lens, you could do some pretty impressive things with it. So this is an image of the crescent moon. And in the top right, you can see a little dot, which was Saturn. And I was quite surprised that when you zoom in, you can actually see the rings on Saturn. So I was quite blown away by what is, quite an affordable lens, the 150 to 600. But you can see Saturn's rings. That I really wasn't expecting that when I took this image. Now, if you want to know where the position of the moon is, this website's really good. I mean, I normally use an app called Photo Pills, but that's £10. I know a lot of people don't want to spend £10 on an app, especially right now. But this website's really good, the Photographer's Ephemeris. So you can just go onto your web browser and go to the Photographer's Ephemeris. And you basically plot the position where you're going to be shooting from. So that red pin there is my house in Pontypridd. The yellow line is the position of sunrise the next day. The orange line is the position of sunset. And then the light blue line is the position of moonrise. The dark blue line is the position of moonset. And the thin blue line you see sort of going south, that's the current position of the moon at that time. So if you ever want to know where the moon is or where it's going to be, if you're trying to plan an image, this is a really, really useful tool. You can also photograph satellites. In the summer months, we see a lot more satellites than we normally do. Because the sun doesn't go very far below the horizon, it lights up the satellites. So satellites don't give off their own light. They actually reflect the sun's light. And because the sun is not very far below the horizon, we see a lot more satellites in the sky during the summer months. So you'll notice a lot of satellites if you look up on a clear night for the next couple of months. One of the most interesting ones, of course, is the International Space Station, because there are people living on that thing when it's flying over your house. It's really, really incredible. So doing a long exposure of the International Space Station, that image on the left I took with my smartphone, the Google Pixel 4. So, there's even astrophotography you can do with a smartphone. But doing the long exposure, obviously, you get the trail of the International Space Station. To the naked eye, it looks like a very bright star sort of moving slowly across the sky. Obviously, in the long exposure, you get a nice trail as it flies over. The image on the right, again, another image I took with that 150 to 600mm lens. And the black dots you see are actually the International Space Station. Almost looks like an X-Wing from Star Wars. But that was a lunar transit of the space station. And I shot on burst mode to get multiple images of the space station as it crossed the disk of the moon. There's another example of a long exposure, wide angle sort of International Space Station flyover. And the funny thing about this image, it was one of Tim Peake's first nights on board the International Space Station. For those of you who don't know Tim Peake, he was the first British astronaut to visit the International Space Station. And so I tagged him in this image when I shared it on social media, and he tweeted back saying, "Nice image, Alyn. Not my first time flying over the Brecon Beacons." And I just thought it was really cool that some guy in space was tweeted me, and he'd seen my image that I'd taken of him from all those miles away. It's incredible how connected things are becoming. But a really, really good app for space station flyovers is ISS Detector. So it loads up a list of all the current or the passes that are happening in the coming days, and it gives you the magnitude. With the magnitude, the lower the number, the brighter it is. So you'll notice that green one there is minus 3.4. That's really bright. Minus 4 is the brightness of Venus, which is the brightest thing in the sky after the moon. So minus 3.4 is really bright. 0 is pretty bright as well. And the human eye can see things to magnitude 6. So magnitude 6 is actually quite dim, very dim. But the smaller the number, the brighter it is. And if it's negative, it's going to be really bright. But you can also click on those passes, and then you can see the image in the middle. It kind of shows you where in the sky it's going to pass over. So it starts in the west, crosses the southwest skies, and ends up in the southeast. So that will help you spot the space station as it flies over. And it also gives you a chance to plan your image in advance and be ready for it. More recently, there's been a lot of attention on the SpaceX Starlink satellites. Now, it's a very touchy subject for astronomers because we're really, really not happy with these Starlink satellites right now. SpaceX are launching 60 satellites every 2 weeks to create a constellation of satellites that will provide global internet, or at least they claim it will provide global internet. And they have plans to launch 12,000, which is insane. At the moment, there are only about 5,000 satellites that are naked eye visible. Well, there are only 5,000 operating satellites in the sky. Probably about 2,000 of those are visible at some point. Whereas Starlink will smother the entire planet with a mesh of satellites, at least 12,000 and possibly going up to 40,000. So it's a really touchy subject for astronomers and astrophotographers right now, but a bit of a novelty if you haven't seen them before. Right after they launch, they look like a string of pearls sort of going across the sky, and then they spread out and go higher and become a little bit dimmer and fainter as time goes by, but they do remain naked eye visible even when they're in the final orbit. So SpaceX have said that they're going to put shades on the next batch of satellites, or not the next one, but the one after that, that will hopefully stop them reflecting the sun's light towards Earth. So fingers crossed for that. But this is a very similar photographical approach to the International Space Station, and you can use the app Heavens Above, which is pretty good. Another interesting little thing you can try as well are these solar cans. So these are basically old pinhole cameras. There's a little black tab on the cans that you buy ready-made. You peel the tab off, set it up somewhere, maybe strap it onto a lamppost or your guttering on your house or your washing line, or just hang it up somewhere. And just leave it there. And the minimum exposure time is 6 weeks. So you have to leave it in the exact same place for 6 weeks. Some people even leave them for a year. And it basically does an extreme long exposure of the sun. So you can see the sun rising, getting high in the sky and setting. So that image there was actually a 1 year exposure where you can see all of the sunrises and sunsets throughout the course of the year. And you can use 20% off with the code AstroAlyn20. I hope that's inspired you guys to enjoy the night sky and appreciate the night sky. Maybe try out a bit of astrophotography yourselves, even if it's from your own back garden as well. And I'm sure after the lockdown ends, we've all got our travel plans to go to wonderful places. I think my video's just disappeared, but whilst we get I'm going to get my video back.
Well, just while Alan's sorting out his video feed there, thank you for everyone that has joined us live. We've had a lot of people live. Not many questions, obviously. If you want sort of any questions, oh, here come the questions. Yeah, here they come. Everyone was really listening intently. It was very quiet in the comments as people were just listening. I think it's your lull dulcet sounds there as well. Nice and calm in there, Alan.
I get mixed reviews, man. Some people tell me I've got like a really nice, soothing voice that they could listen to for hours, and other people tell me that my voice is very boring and it makes them go to sleep.
Yeah, there's definitely two ways that you can do that. Yeah, we had one question come through that was any tips on focusing.
So with focusing, I normally use live view. So I'm looking on the screen on the back of the camera. Make sure your settings are dialed in, because your screen will try and simulate a brighter exposure. So make sure your aperture is nice and open, your shutter speed is long. Start with the lens on infinity, so basically focus as far away as you possibly can, and then you'll have a chance of seeing a star, a bright star, or a planet on the back of the screen. So sort of aim your camera as a bright star or maybe a planet, and then you can zoom in on that star or planet using a digital zoom on your camera, and then you can focus manually on that. But again, there's a video on my YouTube channel, 6 methods for focusing at night, which goes into a lot more depth, and obviously you can see what I'm doing, which will explain things a lot better.
Oh, brilliant! I've put a link in the comments as well to your YouTube channel as well, so everyone
Lovely.
can go over there and check that out. Let's do another question. We have from Andrew Howe. What focal length wide angle do you prefer?
No, I'm a big fan of the 24mm focal length, which I think is like an unpopular opinion. I think most people who shoot landscape astrophotography will shoot at 14 to 20 mil, so like ultra wide. But I really like 24 mil, and I find that it gets a little bit more intimate. And if it's not wide enough, I'll just do a panorama. And when you do a panorama in astrophotography, you end up with so much more detail and less noise in your images. So it's a bit more work, but I love the results of doing like panoramas with a 24 mil. So yeah, my favorite's 24 mil, but 80 to 90% of people prefer sort of 14 to 20 mil, I think.
just to get it all in.
Yeah,
Get it all in one shot.
exactly.
But there's a nice thing though about being out there in the enjoying the night sky as well, though, isn't it? So you say it takes, you say it takes longer to take the photographs, but actually you're out there longer and just spending the time and looking up, while your camera's doing your thing is just absolutely awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, I've done that before. I'll be halfway through a panorama and I was sort of waiting for the 30-second exposure. I'm just like looking at something in the sky, and then 5 minutes later, I was like, oh wait, I was halfway through a panorama.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it seems that you're very sort of knowledgeable on the on the astronomy side of things. I mean, was it the astronomy that came first, or was it the photography for you?
Yeah, it was physics first, and then astrophysics. So I went to Cardiff University to do physics and astronomy, and then started working as an engineer for some reason. And then became a photographer, and it kind of just amalgamated all of those things. So yeah, it was the physics and astrophysics first.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, and obviously it comes down to that thing is having that knowledge to start with. It really does sort of does help, doesn't it, with with what you do.
Yeah, it gives a huge advantage. But I just love teaching that stuff to people who, don't have that background, and who are daunted by it first, but don't realize that it's actually quite simple.
Yeah, and so fascinating as well. Like one of the pictures that you shown as well, where you talked about the different how things were far away as well. With the comment and stuff, with the comet and stuff, and just knowing that, when we look at the stars, it's taking so many light years to get to us. So it's already happened.
Yeah,
we're just waiting for it. Yeah, you're looking into the past, and just sort of looking up is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I think we'll end up on just one more question that's just there. Do you ever use your camera on or with a telescope? Sorry.
No, I've kind of banned myself. I'm really scared of what will happen if I start using telescopes. I think, well, when I say I'm really scared, my wallet's really scared of what will happen if I start using telescopes, because like it's a rabbit hole that just goes on and on. There's bigger scopes and bigger mounts and all of these bits and bobs that you have to get. So I'm just like, I've banned myself. I'm like, look, you just wait till you get retired and you've got a nice little house in the middle of nowhere. Then you're allowed to do deep space. But for now, just like, be careful.
Yeah, yeah, because it's opening that can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's surprising what you can do with a good telephoto lens and a star tracker. Anyway, like some of the stuff you can do, it's almost telescope-like. So
that's brilliant. I've just had a comment
Sarah's
from
getting mad,
Sarah. Yeah. Where is it, Sarah? Oh, I'm scrolling. Where was it? You might just have to repost.
Yeah, I can't find it either.
Yeah, I don't think you actually asked a question, Sarah. Cambrian page.
Oh, come
Oh,
on, you're making us go
you're
over
making us
there.
work.
There's one there about, where was it? The pros and cons of astro-modifying a camera. The pros
there
are
we
that you
go.
get
Yeah.
the pros are that you get more pink things. there's in space you get nebulae which are made of hydrogen, and hydrogen gives off light at a particular wavelength, and you get these hydrogen emissions that give off like a very pink, sort of deep red light, which normal stock DSLRs can't pick up. Well, they do pick up, but they only pick up about 15% of it. So astro modifying allows you to capture that light, and so you get a bit more extra sort of pink in the night sky, which some people love, some people hate. I love it. I think it looks great. The cons are obviously it's quite risky modifying your camera. It might break, you might mess up the sensor, you might mess up the autofocus. But if everything goes well, there really are no cons other than the white balance settings no longer work in your camera. You have to use custom white balances.
That's brilliant. I think is that the question from Sarah?
What? She said, "What do I need to do to persuade Alyn up to North Wales for a weekend?"
There we go.
Don't need to do anything, Sarah. You just need to send me an email, and I'll be there in like 24 hours. She knows this, man.
Oh, dearie me. Yeah, I think we'll do one more, and we'll end it there. We've had one from Gary, and he asks,
Gary Neville.
Yeah.
Is it a football question?
Can I ask astrophotography and make the ground subject sharp? I think it's one or the other, isn't it, Alyn?
No, it's quite surprising. I mean, when you use a wide angle lens like a 14 or a 20 and you're focused at infinity at f2.8, you'll be quite surprised how much of the foreground will be in focus. The other way to do it in a single exposure is to use the hyperfocal distance. So you focus at the hyperfocal distance, which means everything from infinity to half the hyperfocal distance is in focus. So that gets you a little bit more out of the foreground. But if I'm very close to my foreground subject and I'm getting like right up to the ground with a wide angle lens, I'll do what's called a focus stack. So I'll start with my focus on the stars and take an image, and then I'll review that image, see where the focus is dropping, and I'll focus on that point and then keep doing that until I've come all the way through the scene. And then you do the focus stacking in Photoshop, and it's literally like 3 buttons, and Photoshop does everything for you. So
yes, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, when we go wider, our depth of field sort of increases as well. So
yeah,
sort of commenting back on what we said was what's more popular. So the 14 mil is going to give you that sort of that wider look, which will increase your wideness of depth of field as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's
everything
brilliant.
easy. Makes your life easier.
It certainly does. It certainly does. Well, thank you all for your questions. Alyn, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
For our virtual show.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the show.
Oh no, yeah, it's going to be it's amazing. We've got some wonderful talks sort of coming up. I'm going to pop you in the green room. I'll have a quick chat with you just before we finish off.
Thank you everyone for coming.
And thank you very much. There we go. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's been lovely to have you all again. And yeah, we finished day one of 7 days of doing lots and lots of videos for you to love and enjoy. I'll post some more information about Alyn's page. Also, he's got some wonderful presets on his website as well, which you can download that will plug into Lightroom and just ease the the editing side of the of your astrophotography editing. We've got lots more sort of coming up tomorrow as well, so tune in tomorrow for the talks that we've got going. If you're watching live, big thank you for joining in and commenting with all your questions. Thank you very much. I'm seeing lots of thank yous, so that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming. If you're watching this sort of after the fact, so if you're on catch up, or if you're watching it for the first time, not live, please comment. We'll still sort of try and answer questions on things there as well. And also, if you can like the video, share the video, and also do all those things that sort of help us sort of promote the show that we've got going on here. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.